Hi, I'm Shannon from houseimprovements.com, and I'm back today with a video, and I'm going to show you how to cut and build these wood stairs coming off of this deck. As well, in this video we're also going to deal with the post and handrail coming down beside the stairs as well. So really basically what we have here is a typical deck. You know, we're a couple feet off the ground. We've got 4 steps to get up there, and we're just building it all out of wood. There are metal stringers available, but they don't always, because they're pre-made to certain rises, they don't always work out very well. So in this case we're actually going to build the stairs. So one of the first things we should talk about is the stringers themselves. So we're using pressure treated lumber, and in this case we're using 2x10 stringers. We've got a rise of about 6 3/4, I believe. Yeah, 6 3/4, and a run of approximately 10 inches. So 10 inches. So it's a nice gradual slope. It's easy access. It's not like climbing a mountain or anything like that. And 2x10s work out well. The one thing to remember when doing this, and you probably can't see it, I'll actually show it when I cut the stringer out, is the effective depth behind here. What's left of the stringer once we do all the cutting. We want it to be at least 3.5 inches to give it enough strength still. So, but I'll point that out when we're doing the actual cutting and laying out. So to begin with, obviously I've got this side done. There's an identical setup going down the other side of the deck, and really what you need to do is determine your height from the ground down here right to the top of whatever you're going up to, whether it's your front door or maybe you're building some stairs in your house. It doesn't really matter. So you need to take that and divide whatever that height is by a reasonable rise, which is how much each one of these steps is. So I usually start out with 7 inches. So I'll divide that in, and then I'll figure it out from there whether I get a full, an exact equal amount of rises or not. So start with 7 and then adjust that number from there up or down until you get equal steps all the way up. So in this case it ended up working out to 6 3/4, which is, like I said, a really nice gradual step. So anyways, we're gonna go around to the setup at the sawhorses where I've got 2x10, and we're gonna actually start the cutting. Okay, so in retrospect, we thought maybe it might be easier if I had one stringer cut and actually just do a little more explaining on figuring out, you know, how to cut it or how to get your measurements. So we just quickly cut one so we can use an example. We're using 3 altogether in our stairs. Our stairs are almost 4 feet wide, so we want one on the outer edges and then one in the center, so it's not too springy. So this is the stringer. This is the piece right here that we're dealing with, and this is the structural part that holds your steps up. So like I said before, this throat here, you want to have a minimum of 3.5 inches left over for strength. We've got basically 3 5/8 on ours, so we should be all right. If you wanted to, say you only had 3 inches there, then, or say 2 inches, you definitely want to go to a 2x12 if that's how it was going to work out. If you were down to 3 inches, what you could do is still use a 2x10, but sister a 2x4 on the inside. Now just remember though, it's going to stick down a bit, so just depending if you're closing this in and nobody's going to see it, it wouldn't matter anyways. But sistering a 2x4, you know, on the inside all the way along the length will definitely give it some more strength. So anyways, to figure this out, like I said before, we want to measure our total height from down there up to here. In our case it's 27 inches. So one way of doing that, like I said, is take a number. I usually start with 7, divide it into 27 and see what kind of comes up. Another way is to know that, okay, you know, I think four steps up to here would be a comfortable amount. Like when it's short like this, you can kind of guess. So you could also take the 27 and divide it by 4 and just see what you get. In our case we get 6 3/4, and we are using four rises. So that's this distance, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now I know your stringer only has 3 actually on it, right? But the 4th one is this one up here. So, anyways, basically that's the number you need. You need to know what your rise is. Okay, your run isn't quite as critical unless you're limited in space going out this way, or maybe headroom. You know, if you're doing basement stairs and there's an opening in the floor that you've got to stick with. 10 inches is a nice run, comfortable run for exterior or utility type stairs. If you're doing something in your house, you might want more like a 12-inch run or tread. So the 10 inches is actually just this distance here, okay? Plus you're going to have a nosing or a bit of an overhang, usually of about half an inch to an inch. You don't want too much nosing, otherwise when people step on there, that piece wants to twist like that. So, okay, so we've talked about that. So the number we need on our square, and I'll show you how to mark your square out to actually trace this all out, or mark it all out and cut it. We need that 6 3/4 in our case, and the 10 inches. Okay, so I think that kind of helps you visualize a little more what we're trying to do here. You're probably noticing that this down here definitely doesn't look the same. This looks shorter than this, right? And this and this. The reason for that is once we've had to make a deduction here when we did our cutting to cut this down, because once this goes on, then we have our 6 3/4 from the ground up to here, okay? And then what happens is, then you're measuring from the top of here to the top of the next one will be 6 3/4. So that's why this is looking a little off. Trust me, it all works out. And same thing here. When we go up to there, we've got our tread on there, and we come up and we'll be up to 6 3/4 there. Okay, we're slightly out here because we've got 27 inches here, 27 1/4 to the ground here because of the slope of the concrete pad. But in the end, that all works out fine. If you had a real big difference, like for some reason maybe you had an inch difference, then you'd want to adjust your treads accordingly. Keep this space the same and all the ones down, but the last one would be different. So this distance here, if this part of the pad was lower than over here by an inch, this distance here would change by an inch. This one by half of that, and that one would be 0, right? Like what you started out with. Okay, so we'll go over to the sawhorses and I'll show you how to set the square up to mark this all out. We're going to mark it out. We're going to cut 2 more. We're going to make a couple changes to one of them that'll be in the middle, and I'll explain that at the time. Actually, I'll explain it right now. Why don't I do that? When we put this all together to attach it to the wall, I'm going to add a cleat in here. So this cleat is going to have construction adhesive bonding it here and a couple of screws. There'll be another stringer on this end exactly the same, and we're going to have one here. So we need to cut on this one, we need to cut 1.5 inches off the back, right off the back side here to make up for this difference. So we'll make those changes when we actually do all the cutting. Okay, so we've set up sawhorses here, tried to get me in the shade a little bit. So as I said, we're going to replicate this one stringer we had. Now once you make one, you could just lay this down and trace it out, but I'm just going to show you how to actually do it here with the square. So you've got your square, and I've got these, they're called stair gauges, and you can pick these up. They're not real expensive. If you're only doing one set of stairs, you may not even want to bother. But basically what you want to do is lay your square on the board so that you've got your rise on the tongue of the square, which is the narrower end. This end's the body. So the rise on the outside edge here from the very point to here ends up being what you want it. You can't necessarily measure it right on, or mark it right on the measurement that is on the square. Just depends how it kind of ends up. But so line, in our case, 6 3/4 on the square up here, and 10 inches here with this edge. Okay, this is the top edge of the stringer. With the stringer, you want to make sure you've got the crown up if there is a crown. So this will be the top edge. Once you have your square sitting there, if you have these gauges, you can just slide them on, tighten them up, and then, you know, they just make it easier to slide and move this along, and you'll see as I go why that's kind of important. If you don't have these, you just have to kind of measure it out each time, or just carefully, you know, make sure you're lined up perfectly every time. So now to start out, we'll go right to the end. You can see this is the end of the board that we already cut that original one off of. I'm just going to come a little bit from the end. So I'm going to do a rise here. So this will be my bottom edge. I'm just going to, because I'm starting out, I'm just going to make that mark. This will all make more sense once I get going. Now I just want to slide the line along until it intersects at this point with that last pencil mark that I put on. And I'll just trace it out again. And just keep doing that along forever, however many risers you need. So you can see, if you kind of visualize this, well, this line isn't very dark. I'll just darken it up so you can see it on there. I don't have enough drawn on there yet, but just so you can kind of see what I'm doing. This will be like this. Here's your tread, here's your rise. Okay? So you keep moving along. We know we've got 3 rises on the actual stringer. So there's 1, 2. This is the 3rd one. Here's our 4th, or our 3rd run right there, and we still need to make this line across here. Okay. Now I'm also going to just make this line right through here. This seems a little backwards to me because I'm usually standing on this side. So if I get a little mixed up, that would be why. So then I'm just going to write on here, my pencil will work, cut. So I want to cut along that line. That's the top end. This one here is the first rise off the ground, and remember when I showed you a minute ago how it's a little bit narrower? It's going to be 1.5 inches narrower because that's what our tread material is made out of. So from this little mark here, which is the ground in this case, we want to come up 1.5 inches, and that will get sliced off there. So this will just get cut right along there, right off flush. Now it's important to kind of mark some of these lines, which ones you're cutting as you're marking them out, so that you don't get mixed up. Okay, so we're cutting that right off here. We'll be cutting all this, and then obviously through there, and then cutting that right off. So we'll just be left with this piece right below my finger, right in here. Okay, so that's 1. We needed 3 altogether, so we'll just go ahead and do that again. Now, because this is getting cut off anyways, it's not actually part of the tread, I can actually just come up from that line. I could go right here, but just to make it a little clearer for you, I'm just going to start a little bit away from it. Okay, so that's our first rise again at the bottom. Just putting a little reference mark there. I'm going to do it exactly how I just did it the first time, so I don't mix you up. Okay, so get all your steps in there. Okay, so those are all there. This is a cut mark again. So cut. We'll come back down here like I did on the first one. Come up the 1.5 inches because we got to get rid of that. And this will be a cut line here. Okay, so cut. And that. Okay, now one of these, if you remember how I was telling you how that cleat was going to go through, one of these on this top edge, we've got to cut an extra 1.5 inches off of it at the top. So we'll just make it this one. So actually I should have had this down here. I got a lot of marks here. It's a good way to get confused. Okay, so I've got 2 marked out there. And like I said, once you have one, you could just take that one and use it as a template and trace all the other ones out. But so now to cut this all out, what I want to do is with combination of cutting with the skill saw and with a jigsaw, I can make all of these cuts. So this cut I can cut right through, cut that whole end off with the skill saw, and make this cut right here as well, right off. So this piece will be gone and this piece will be gone. Then with the skill saw I'm going to cut in, and I'm going to stop right before I get there, and I'm going to stop when I get there. I'm going to do that on every one. So these little triangles, which are the scrap part, are still going to be kind of attached because the blade hasn't gone all the way ahead. I don't want to cut past this line or it's just going to look ugly because you're going to see this saw cut. So I'll finish those little corners out with the jigsaw. So I'll just go ahead and start making those cuts so you can kind of see what I'm actually doing. So I'll cut this off first. And I'm pretty sure you can't zoom in quite that far, but you can see where my saw blade stopped just before it intersected this line there. Now I can make this cut. And the same thing there. I just stopped so I didn't have saw kerfs going past that area. Okay, I'm just going to finish those two out there with the jigsaw, and then I'll just go and cut the whole rest of the stringer out. Okay, so you can start to really visualize it now that the confusion of all the lines is gone, that it's starting to form and look like the same piece that I was pointing or using as an example there a few minutes ago. I'm going to finish cutting all this out. One other important thing to think about when you're picking out the material for the stringers is to be sure there isn't too much for cracks or flaws in it, because now that we've cut all this out, this becomes a weak point. And your stair treads are going to go on here. So if this has a split or a crack in it, more than likely this piece is going to break off fairly easily. So make sure you've got a nice sound piece of wood to do your stringers from. I should just mention this is the top cut again. Here's our second or our third piece. So on this top cut, because I'm going to be cutting this off, this cut I can bring right through there a little bit instead of stopping like I did with all the other ones. Okay, so now we should end up with three almost identical pieces. Here's the original one we're using as in our discussion. You lay everything out On top of here, they should all line up pretty good. This is the one that's going to be a little short on this one end by 1.5 inches. Get them all flushed up. So you can see, actually my bottoms is just slightly different for some reason. 5 1/4. Oh, they're actually not too bad. Anyways, you can see the idea there that they basically all should be the same template, other than this one is 1.5 inches shorter on the back. I got a little bit of variance on the bottom there, so I'll just trim them up so they're the same. And then we should be all right. The next thing we'll do is basically start to assemble the structure, the stringers against the deck, and then we can put the steps on, the boards for the treads. Okay, so now we want to install the 3 stringers to this cleat that we had. And again, it's just pressure treated. So I'm going to put a little construction adhesive on the end and a couple screws through the side into it. Just start those in there. So it's going to, obviously this is going to sit like this. I want the cleat flush to here and flush to this back side. Just like that. I'm going to do the same thing on this other end. Start a couple screws in there. Should I put the screws in first? Move that out of the way so you can see a little more what I'm doing. So same thing, I just want it flush to the top and flush to the back side. If I just bring it around somewhat square to the world, it'll be a little easier. Come on. There. And one there. Now the center one, I just want it in the middle of this span, so I marked a pencil mark there. I'll put a little construction adhesive on the back side of this. Sticks on there. And I'll probably have to kind of lift this. I might be able to get one screw started. I'm just going to rest it on my knee. And I just want it flush to the top of the cleat. Okay, so we got the basics structure of our stairs ready to go. And then it'll just sit up against there with a couple screws in place to hold it in place. With this design, what I did is I'm allowing my step to hang over, I think it was 4 inches each way. Let's double check that. This is one of the pieces of the treads. Yeah, 3 inches, I guess. 38, yeah. No, 8 inches, or 4 inches, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to mount this end here about 4 inches away from that and get it all on there. And I just want to verify, once I've got it sitting where I want, that the treads are basically going to be level or very close to it. So I'll just get some screws started in so it's ready to go. So I'm going to use 6 3-inch these ACQ treated screws to hold this all in place. And it works out really well here because I use 2x10 joists. These screws aren't just going into this 3/4 inch skirting I have here. They're actually going through that and into the 2x10 as well. So they're grabbing a good amount of lumber there. You could use leg bolts if you just wanted, say 1/4 inch by 3 inch or 4 inch leg bolts if you wanted in this situation. So I'm just going to get this positioned. Hopefully you can kind of see. Get it about 4 inches from that edge there. Okay, now our each rise is supposed to be 6 3/4. Now, because we don't have the treads on here, this will actually be 1.5 inches bigger than that. So what's that? 8 1/4. And we're about 8 1/2. So we're a little low right now. Let's just see what the level says as far as if our treads would be level. And it actually does indeed say we can pull that up a little bit. So I'm just going to put a mark here so I don't lose my spot. Did you want to move the camera around, or are you all right? Okay. I'll just let him get around to where he can see better. Okay, so I just pulled that up. Yeah, there's our 8 1/4 right there. I'm going to tack that in. And tack it in here. We want these to be sitting down on the concrete, right? So that's obviously number one. It probably may not be level this way because our concrete is a little bit sloped. Actually we are pretty level, so we're all right there, and we should be pretty reasonable this way. We're pretty good there. So I think we're going to call that happy medium as far as being good. We're good on this end. I'm sure we're just a little higher here. Yeah, we're 8 3/8 there because of the slope of the concrete. But for a deck, that's going to be more than sufficient. So I'm going to drive these screws home. And I don't PL this to the deck because if you ever had to take these off for some reason, you're just going to wreck a bunch of stuff trying to pry that off of there. Okay, so we've got our basic structure there. I've got all my treads cut. There's no point in showing that part. It's just, we're just using 2x6s per tread. So I've got them all cut. One thing I just realized I haven't done on these treads is I've got to put some wood preservative on all these cuts. So we'll just break away here for a minute while I do that. Okay, so we ended up taking the this whole set right down because I realized the back sides here weren't done, or the bottom side that's sitting on the concrete. That's something worth mentioning. In most cases, you aren't going to be coming down to a concrete pad like we are, so you really don't want your stringers sitting right on the ground. So maybe put a couple patio stones or something like that there for them to have a nice solid bearing on. It keeps them up out of the dirt a little bit. So we're down to the treads here. So I've got them all pre-cut to length. Did that up last night. I'm just going to pop them all on there, and then if any of them have a bit of an ugly spot or anything like that, I can swap them around and get the nicest edges I can. Seems like this lumber's even starting to get bad every year. It gets a little worse. So actually I'm pretty happy with that. I think we can live with those. So I'm just going to pop these ones off so they're on my way. So I'm going to attach this using 3-inch the ACQ screws that we've been using for the whole construction of these stairs. And I'll just put the first one on. I'm going to push it over, not quite tight to that skirting over here. I'll just separate a little bit, and I'll put a screw in. Like so. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom. This shouldn't have put all those on there in the way. I want to get this over 4 inches from there again, and it's 42 inches outside. That one's good. That's good. I just want the stringers sitting where they need to be. Now I'll screw one of these bottom ones on here, just to kind of hold things straight. Oops. You could use some construction adhesive if you want on these, but it's not really necessary. So it's 2 screws per board per stringer. There's a 3-inch. I'm just going to get them all fastened on. Now for the second board on each one, I'm just leaving just a slight gap between them. Again, we have, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch overhang here. It's just nice so we don't have any issues down the road. Now if you didn't like this open look here on the riser, you could design this all so this part overhangs a little bit more and you have another piece of 2x4 or 2x6 in there, or even pressure treated plywood, or maybe a piece of fence picket, whatever you want. We didn't in this case, but okay, I think I got all the screws in there. Yeah, so we got that done. So there's your basic stairs. This is you know, one option to do your stairs. Anyways, you could have your stringers right on the outside, more like a residential stairs. So these are closed in. This is kind of the simplest stringer that you can cut yourself with some pretty basic tools that most people have. Okay, so that's the stairs. Now we're going to set up and look at adding the post down here on the ground and the spindles and handrail on that. Okay, so for the handrail going down the stairs here, the first thing we need to do is get a post in the position that we've established we want it. So to do that, because we're on a concrete pad, we're going to use this mounting box, and we need to first secure that to the concrete. So I basically want to just get it in place, lined up with where basically this post is, or wherever I want it, and basically get it square to the world. I'm going to mark the holes, and we're going to use these same hammer and anchors that you've seen in one of the previous videos when we did the deck framing. Just got to get these holes marked. I'll move this out of the way. I've loosened off this tread just so it's not in our way either. And I'll go ahead and drill those 4 holes. Now if you had, if you were doing this and it was on earth or ground or whatever, you could actually drill a hole in the ground and cement a post in there or whatever if you wanted. We obviously don't have that luxury here. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. You've seen this on the other video if you've watched it. Should always have the nut on there when you're hammering, so if you bang up the threads, At least the nut's either on there, or you could thread it off to fix the threads up. I'd normally like to have a washer in there, but there's not really enough room to get it in there. There's little tabs on this side. These bolts, I should have maybe put the tabs out the front. Would have been easier to get at it. Can't even really get the nut on there. That's going to be a real pain. I'm going to have to do something different. Okay, so the problem we're having is this bolt is so close to this tab here. I've bent the tab in a bit. I'm going to bend it just a little more. I was able to get the nut on at least. And if I had a punch, that'd be the best tool, but I'm going to use the 6-inch drive extension. There we go. So that worked. Get this last nut on. Okay, and then I'll have to just bend this tab back out, but I can tighten these bolts down now. Oops. It's too bad they didn't have a little bit bigger foot on this. Can't even get a socket in there to drive those home. So you can see it doesn't always go smooth. We don't edit very much out, and I think some of our viewers appreciate that. So for this type of job, you might want to have a punch handy, just in case. Or maybe if I would have put this out on the other corner, it would have at least been a little easier spot to get at. Okay, so we got that down. See if I can get this bent out somehow again. What happens is there's bolts that go through these corners to squeeze against the 4x4 post once it's in there. I think that'll work. Okay, so I guess we can continue on. Okay, so now we've got that bracket secured. We're gonna slip the 4x4 in there, and I've got this just to a random long length. Once we establish the height of our rail, we can always cut this post off later. So I'll just put these, oh yeah, that's right. I need to chisel just a little corner of those posts off where this bolt slides through to allow the bolt past it. Again, I should have had these spun the other way. Would have been much easier to get at. I was being smart by tucking them out of the way where they weren't seen as bad, but it just caused me more issues. Need a little more off there. Okay, Eureka, we've got one in. And we've got two in. Okay, so I'm just going to snug those two up. I'll just double check that the post is somewhat plumb in two directions. Doesn't have to be completely perfect just yet. Pretty livable there, so I'll just snug these couple up. Again, I totally have this in a bad spot. Actually, I wonder if I can get my, I've got a driver here. Maybe I can sneak this in there. Okay, so that just, it kind of clamps the post in there. We are going to insert a couple more leg bolts once we get it pretty much completely plumb, just to give it a little more support. There are some other holes in here, but I actually drilled myself different holes up higher. I figured that would be better for a little leverage. And so now I'll just get this post really good. Like so. Okay, so we've got the post in. You're going to have some movement in it. Once we put this railing on, that'll help. This post will never be 100% secure. The best case scenario would be to have it in the ground, because you're going to get some play in it no matter what kind of bracket you have, because the metal's going to give a little. Okay, so got that part. How about I just get a few of these tools out of the way and then we'll come back. Okay, so now we've got the post in place. We need to figure out our angle for and length of our top and bottom rails. And again, we're just doing the same thing as you would have seen in our railing video. We've ripped a 2x6 in half so we can get the same look here. So to figure out this angle, about the easiest way to do it is just lay your piece of wood on there and trace against your two posts, and then just go to a miter saw and just adjust your blade until you can read, you know, that it's lined up with that line. Lock it in place, and you've got your angle. So I'm just going to zip over to my saw, cut this one off, double check that it fits, and we should be able to cut, as long as these two holes are plumb and they're parallel to each other, we can cut them both the same. They'll be a top and bottom. Okay, so we've cut our top and bottom pieces. Basically what I did is I went over, found that angle on the saw. I don't even remember now what it was, maybe 34 degrees. I cut one end and I brought it over and just set it against the post here so I could make sure that that was right. It looked good. So then I cut it to length. I've determined my height here. So that's where the top of this rail is going to go. I determined that by figuring out the length of my spindles, which are the same as those ones, just they're a little shorter because of the angle. Once they're in, there's a hub that goes in there and everything. So anyways, I just determined the total height I wanted. Yours could be different, so I'm not going to go into detail there, but just figure out what this is going to be for height when it's all put together. So you'll find that spot up here. It's not going to match up with that one. It's going to be down here somewhere. And then I just figured out where this point here is going to be. It's just easier to have the bottom one in place and work up than to try to put all those spindles in working down. So I'm going to put a little PL on here, a little construction adhesive. Yeah. And I've got a pencil mark there determining what I wanted. I want it in the center of the post. And I can put a screw in there. We did the moisture protection stuff all on the cut edges as well. Okay, so I got that one in there. We're going to get one up from the bottom. I'm probably going to be in your way to see, but you know what I'm doing. Centering it on the post. Okay, so we got the bottom one in there. Then also, these are the clips for this. Because it's on the angle, obviously the clips are on an angle as well. So they come all pre-made with an angle cut on them, and you know, they give you a little bit of variance unless your slope gets really different from a normal stair. If you get really steep stairs, so they're kind of a generic angle on those ones. What I did is I just figured out the best spacing that worked out here. It worked out best. I found the center and measured out to the ends from there. Because it's on the angle, you know, you're measuring here on the angle. Over here we measured 4 inches apart because we wanted 4 inches or less between them. So to get basically the same thing, I found that because this is on the angle, I actually had to go 4.5 inches center to center to make these about the same space apart as those are. So again, just depending on your situation, you just have to kind of play with it and figure out what works best for the ones you're doing. We'll just fasten these on there quick. Oops. I think there ended up being 7 spindles in this length. So I'll put these all on. I've got the top rail cut to length and marked out as well for these, so I'll put those all on and then we'll come back and get things lined up and put together. Okay, so we've got our little hub dealies on top and bottom rail. Just going to stick our spindles on here. And I'll just work away at getting these lined up and start it in. Notice I didn't put any PL on this one, just because it's kind of difficult to do without getting it on everything. In this case, I found out on the other side when I did the first one. But the very top handrail part that we put in, whoops, will get PL'd, so it'll help secure this as well. Get those all on there. Okay, so pretty good there. This one's a little funky for some reason. Does it look out of whack? The spacing looks pretty good. Why is this one a little out? I think this doohickey here must be a little bit too high on that one spot. All the rest of them are going to be good. Actually, there's 2 of them, so I'm going to have to move a couple of them just a little bit down. Must have got off on my spacing. They look nice and plumb. I'll just move those couple and then we'll get it back on here. Okay, so that worked out better. I just adjusted those couple. They must have been slightly off. They looked okay, but on my pencil mark. Okay, so I'm gonna attach this top one here. Oops. Oops, I must have pushed it up. Need an extension so I can get in there. Okay, I just got a longer driver so I don't have to damage one of those pickets getting in there. Okay, that's better. Now we also really just did the same thing to cut this piece. We already knew the length because it's identical to this. The angles and everything should be the same. So this piece is going to sit on here, and we're going to use a little bit of PL and fasten it down. Now before I do that though, I want to determine the height of my post and cut it off just in case this happens to be in my way. So we're going to have these little light things like this sitting on there, and I just want to determine how high based on whatever your preference is, and then I'll mark that and cut it off. Okay, so I've determined the height I need. I'm just going to square a line around the whole post here and cut it off with the circular saw. So we got that. That's one side, and we'll do the same thing here. Just like that. This basically will never be exposed to moisture, but I'm gonna put some stuff on it anyways. Okay, so we got that. Now we can put this top handrail piece on. Just sits down in there nicely. Okay, so we've got our rail on there. There's going to be one of these solar lights on there. I'll just pop that on while we're at it. All right, so we basically showed you a couple different things in this video. It was just easier to do the railing and everything at the same time as we did the stairs. We kind of needed it in place to get our positioning of the rail anyways. So hopefully this was helpful for you, and it kind of wraps up our deck series here. About all we need now is a couple chairs and a nice cold drink to sit up there and enjoy it, but it's way too hot right now to worry about that. So we're going to wrap things up, and as always, I've put my little spiel in to have you go to our website and check out everything there. At the website you can find our forum page, you can find some articles, and you'll also find the link right to our YouTube channel right there too, so you can view all the videos. We have over 100 videos up that you can watch. go up and check them all out. If you have any questions on this video or anything else in any of the videos you've seen, or maybe just a random project you got going on, put your question on the forum and I'll do my best to get to it and answer it as quickly as I can. Thanks for now, and we'll see you next time.